Caribbean Climate Network, 350.org. You have arrived at the Caribbean Climate Network Climate Chats, and we are talking about climate change in our region. It's the change in climate due to fossil fuel emissions. It's real and it's affecting our ocean, air, land, and even our culture. So we are here today to talk about climate change causes. We haven't reached the effects yet. We're going to be talking about the causes of climate change. And we want to talk about globally, the oil and gas industry. We are just a small percentage of that major industry. We don't produce even, I think, 1% of what the world is producing in terms of hydrocarbons and fossil fuel extraction and refining and stuff like that, right? And we know that Trinidad and Guyana are the two major economies in this region that are the producing. They're the ones that are exploring for oil and gas, both in the ocean and on land. And we know that we are like the crude oil and natural gas exports. Those are the mainstay of our hydrocarbon economy here. Now, with that, countries are supposed to be earning a lot from this potential natural resource that is being unmanaged, right? But within that, we have a lot of political issues with regard to where this money is going. What is it doing? Is the money going to be finding a solution in the future that is not going to be as detrimental on the human population and the world at large, right? That doesn't have as much pollution, that doesn't have as much impact on the environment, impact on the climate. And are we now looking for a solution, a just transition away from this to a more sustainable energy source? Because we know that humans require so much energy to, survive our society now. So I don't know, Princess, if you have any concepts of how you think like vulnerable communities, climate change causes are affecting these vulnerable communities, if you wanted to chat about that.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm really happy that you raised so many important points to this, because the first thing that came to my mind was just the aspect of overconsumption and how this industry thrives on that. It's sustained by overconsumption. And because of the need of profit from this capitalist system, it will continue to do so at the expense of people, at the expense of vulnerable communities, and also at the expense of our environment. When I think about the oil and gas industry, I often go straight to why risk reduction is so important, because that is definitely lacking in so many areas. And when we think about the workers in this space, there's already an inherent bias, because of course it is very male dominated, right? So even though the men are at great risk, because we see several cases of injuries and deaths and reports of the hazards that they have to face on a daily basis, we still see that change in the dynamic where it is largely represented by men. And still they are placed in this position where they are at great harm and susceptibility to harm, because of course they're trying to sustain their own livelihoods, but they're placed in this condition where it's very easy to be in a state where you may not be able to work tomorrow. Right? And then when we think about the wider context of how this relates to their communities, there are many communities that are in very close proximity to these spaces where they are resulting in oil leaks and oil spills. How does this impact the fisherfolk? How does it impact the community where they have to acquire resources in these same spaces where there are so many contaminants that they cannot use the water supply? And so this then goes back to those who need these resources, such as girls and women, for hygiene, for safe reproductive health care. This goes back to persons who may need these products just to sustain themselves, and they cannot do so because they are very close to an industry that does not take their well-being into full account. And again, it relies heavily on sustaining themselves and the profit that they generate from this industry to keep going. And then we have to question, where does this go to? And I think you mentioned that point as well earlier about where does this go to? Who does this particularly benefit? Because it's definitely not the communities at risk.
Exactly. And that's the thing. So like we also see these oil and gas companies, and I have worked in oil and gas before, right? Great experience, good to understand. But at the same time, you feel like, you're trying to put a band-aid on a bullet hole sometimes. Because how can you then say that you're trying to benefit the community or benefit even the culture, but then you are not taking these precautions that are protecting the people and nature to the best of your ability? So it's like, it's all about responsibility, I think, and being able to say that it's not about that gross profit gain for those few pockets that are being lined. It's about seeing that you're taking care of your business by doing good business and then using the profits from that business to find a way to do things better for the future. Because we know that oil and gas is it's a finite resource. It's not going to last forever. So why are we still building upon something that is so finite when we can be using the products from that to find a better way forward? So like my idea was always green hydrogen. I always thought that was a nice solution. Of course, with technology and stuff like that in the future, we may find other solutions. Or we just, figure out how to harness our natural resources that are renewable, like our sunlight, our wave energy, our wind. So I don't know if you wanted to chat more about those and the potential.
Yeah, and I think that should be the way to go. There are so many of us fighting for a just energy transition, and we are urgently demanding our leaders and our governments and our policymakers to really think about the future that we're trying to build and sustain. Not just about the money, not just about the profits. Think about the people. Think about the generations to come that are deserving of a safe space to live in, to thrive in, to survive in. And so that is the way to go. That should be a priority. And I think to go further, it not just should be a priority, but we should not repeat the mistakes that we've made, that these organizations have made with the oil and gas industry. This should be a case where it's equitable and that communities, even if it's the lower class communities, anyone should be able to access this. And so we have to think about the geographical state of things. We have to think about people's access to these equipments and these items that can be able to be utilized as an alternative to the oil and gas industry. Think about the new policies that we have to put in place instead, but to stray largely away from the aspect of using a new industry, putting in more sources of renewable energy, and then we do this largely for profit. Because then we're just making the same mistake. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's kind of like we had the opportunity to build back better as well, and we're not doing that. We're not managing our systems, we're not maintaining our systems, and we're not improving our systems. We're just going with the flow, reaping the rewards of this extraction, but not actually doing what we're supposed to do with it. And something interesting that I thought of as well is that, yes, Trinidad and Guyana are the major producers, right? So we are the countries that are going to be benefiting from these profits. But then the other countries, our neighbors, our entire region, are still dependent on what we are doing as well. And in the end, they're the ones that are suffering with this extreme cost for energy. Yeah. So it's like, how do we become a little bit more equitable throughout this region? How do we hold each other's hands and find a way into the future where fossil fuels are not keeping us at ransom? Because we can go into renewables. It is not a switch off everything right now. It's all about that just transition, improving our capacity as humans, making sure that the environment has due diligence done. It's such a big issue, but it's not like we want a switch to be turned off. We know that it's a process, and that is what a true just transition looks like. Yeah. So what do you think about that?
I mean, I'm excited to see where this leads because again, so many people are fighting for this, even with the event that's happening in Santa Marta soon. There are so many people that you're seeing collectively standing towards this decision. We just need the persons with the resources and funding and the persons who actually are in a space where they can make these definite changes to take action. And then we'll see such drastic impacts that are to the benefit of us and people in the future. But as you mentioned, it's not going to happen overnight. Rome was not built in a day, right? We know this, right? It's just a process of we need to start somewhere. We need to start somewhere. We need to start yesterday. And we need to take that steady progress to get where we need to be to keep our communities safe.
Exactly. And as we know, adapting now is going to save the lives in the future as well. So it is a systematic change that we need. And we hope that we here at the Caribbean Climate Network and 350.org that you will follow us on our journey throughout the Caribbean region and the world as we fight towards creating a better future for us during this climate crisis. Thank you so much and follow us for more. Take care until our next episode. Bye.
Bye.